The row between Ethiopia and Egypt was evident in the 79th UNGA when the Ethiopian Foreign Secretary accused Egypt of destabilizing the Horn of Africa. This was, in fact, the first right of reply of Ethiopia at this 79th UNGA when the foreign minister of Ethiopia accused Egypt of destabilizing the Horn of Africa. This is after Egypt came closer to Somalia and is working with Somalia in terms of security. And all this can be drawn back to the long-standing conflict that Egypt and Ethiopia have been having regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, that is the GAD. And the Ethiopian Foreign Secretary said that there are no colonial laws that will shake Ethiopia. That is referring to the laws that Egypt usually follows regarding the River Nile. And by the way, if you want to have the full detail of these discussions about Ethiopia and Egypt and the River Nile, you can go and check one of my videos. I've done an extensive view of the row between Ethiopia, Egypt, and to extension Somalia, but partly of what I'm going to cover also in this video. So Ethiopia said that it is not going to follow any colonial laws that happened or were signed before. And this is in reference to what Egypt always quotes when any country tries to interfere with the River Nile. They say that they signed agreements and treaties decades ago that no one should touch the River Nile, regardless of whether it is the Blue Nile or the White Nile, and no one should interfere with any water catchment area that is affecting the River Nile, because Egypt's economy, Egypt's livelihood depends on the River Nile. As the river flows through Egypt, you know, Egypt is basically a desert. 90 to 98% of the country is a desert. And it is the River Nile that gives the lifeline to Egypt. In fact, Egypt's economy is sustained by the River Nile and the Suez Canal. And that is why Egypt is very protective of the River Nile and anyone who tries to interfere with the flow of River Nile. And Ethiopia has the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that it is constructing. The problem is this Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam will be the largest dam to be constructed in Africa. And that means that the reservoir is also huge and it is going to take years to fill that reservoir. And that is what Egypt is fearing, because if Ethiopia goes ahead and channels the tributaries that feed the Blue Nile to filling that dam, then it means that less and less water will be released downstream, and that means that Egypt will have less water for the River Nile. And the River Nile also feeds the Aswan High Dam that provides electricity to Egyptians. So it is an entire lifeline of the economic activity and social life of Egyptians, because if anyone affects the River Nile, it threatens the existing government of dissatisfaction from the citizens, and that could now go ahead to cause a lot of unrests even in Egypt. So that is why Egypt is very protective of River Nile. And as you know, Ethiopia and Egypt do not share a border. So that means that they don't have any point where they will have a conflict. And that is where now Somalia comes in. And that is why Egypt has been very close to Somalia. Egypt and Somalia have one foe as we stand today. And that foe is Ethiopia, because Ethiopia also signed a deal with Somaliland. This is a region north of Somalia that has, by the way, self-governed itself for 3 good decades plus. For over 30 years, Somaliland has been self-governing, but the problem is Somaliland has never been accepted by the UN or the AU as a nation by itself. So the international community regards that part of Somaliland to be part of Somalia, the entire Somali region. So that is the problem, because Ethiopia made a deal with Somaliland, and the deal that Ethiopia made with Somaliland is an access to the sea. You know, after the secession of Eritrea, Ethiopia remained to be a landlocked country, and Ethiopia has been seeking avenues that it can have an access to the sea so that it can also have a naval base. Now, the major problem is the deal that Ethiopia made with Somaliland is not only to provide it with the commercial avenue from the port, it's also to create a naval base, an Ethiopian naval base in Somaliland. So Somalia saw it as a provocation, and that is why they have a problem with Egypt. But this video is not about Somalia and Egypt. This is a video for Egypt and Ethiopia. Now, Egypt comes in where Somalia has a problem with the same country that it has a problem with. So Egypt has made a move to be close to Somalia in this time so that they can work together to pressure Ethiopia to stop whatever Ethiopia is doing. Ethiopia, in its defense, is saying that other countries have deals with regions of particular countries and that it was not a problem. In its statement, Egypt said that it is rejecting unilateralism. That means that it rejects the idea that Ethiopia has to make decisions on its own regarding the River Nile, while the River Nile is a natural resource that is shared among many countries. Egypt also stated its position by saying that it is defending the sovereignty of Somalia and that Ethiopia is leading to an unnecessary conflict in Somalia by making deals with a region that wants to secede from a particular country. Egypt gave its position that it rejects unilateralism, and further, it also said that it defends Somalia's sovereignty over the aggression of Ethiopia by making deals with a region of Ethiopia without involving the government in Mogadishu. A particular term that Egypt kept on using is fair use, that Ethiopia should encourage fair use of natural resources that other countries are also benefiting from, that it should not only consider itself while using the Blue Nile waters and should also factor in mind that other nations are benefiting from this natural resource. Ethiopia, in its defense, said that it is using the water for the benefit of its own nationals, that there are millions of Ethiopians that do not have electricity, and that tapping on this natural resource will give these nationals, these Ethiopians, a chance to have electricity, the chance to benefit themselves economically through the dam, and by the fact that Ethiopia will now have more electricity to even supply to other nations and get revenue to benefit Ethiopians. The Egyptian foreign minister went ahead and said these words, that anyone who thinks Egypt will compromise on any existential threat is mistaken. On the other hand, Somaliland also released a statement. Somaliland will not be at the UNGA because it is not yet recognized as a country by the UN or the AU, as I said earlier, but it released a statement over all this that is happening and said that it is deeply alarmed by the altercations and brewing of conflict that is happening in the region. And Egypt went ahead and called all its citizens living in Somaliland and told them to leave the area because of security reasons. Now, there's a lot that is happening in the Horn of Africa. One thing is for sure is that these countries are playing checkers with each other, because right now, as we speak, Somalia received arms from Egypt just 5 days ago, and this is the second batch. The first batch came in with 2 planes. Now this batch came in with military warship from Egypt and gave Somalia a lot of arms. And there is the fact that ATMIS, that is the Africa Union Transition Mission in Somalia, is coming to an end. And the next mission, that is awesome, will involve Egypt. And there is a fact that Somalia has told Ethiopians or Ethiopian soldiers to leave its territory, to go back to the Ethiopians' territory, and those will be replaced by Egyptian soldiers. So there are about 10,000 Ethiopian soldiers in Somalia, and those are now supposed to go back beyond the border, and that gap will be filled by Egyptian soldiers. So that means that while Ethiopia and Egypt do not share a border right now, it will be possible in the next, in the awesome security operation that will happen in Ethiopia. Should ATMIS end and awesome start, it means that Egypt will be at the doorstep of Ethiopia. And the conflict between these two now will bring the Horn of Africa to a standstill. Because at the same time, we have Somaliland and Somalia having a diplomatic row because Somalia doesn't want or doesn't entertain the conversation of secession. And we have the row now between Somalia and Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is saying that these armories that are being given to Mogadishu are a threat because they will end up in the arms of the insurgencies that happen in Somalia. So there is a lot that is happening in the Horn of Africa. And we'll be here to inform you of the developing stories between these three nations and the fact that the Horn of Africa is at the cusp of an all-out war between Ethiopia and these two countries.